Coming up on today's Locked On Senators, it seems like there's going to be a fire sale in Calgary. Can the Senators take advantage of a team that has star after star saying that they want out?
And we continue our 2023 NHL Draft prospect profiles with a player at each position. We've got Carson Rehkopf, Hunter Brzustewicz, and Trey Augustine.
And we are 96 days away from Ottawa Senators hockey. The preseason schedule is here. We'll discuss all that and more. This is the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 827 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. You can also find us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Today is Friday, June 23rd, and Pilsy, oh my God, just getting a preseason schedule. I'm fired up for Sens hockey.
Yeah, it is nice just to see the preseason schedule. But Ross, I mean, I feel like the NHL just uses Ottawa as like their traveling circus team for every preseason. Like once again, the Sens are traveling all over the place to play these games. Now, look, obviously it's cool though, because especially I know we got a bunch of East Coast Sens fans out there. So having the games in Sydney and Halifax is nice, but man, that's a lot of travel for meaningless games. And then you've got the Sweden trip as well. So the Sens are going to get their air miles in. Let's just say that.
Yeah, they certainly will. Also interesting to note, last year, they did the Sydney, the St. John's game. Those were right at the beginning of training camp. At least now it's towards the end of camp. So you'll have closer to what the NHL roster is going to be. Now that's good for a couple reasons. One, team building.
Yes.
Like as cool as it is for the fact that these kids are going to get opportunities to play, I think it's a good thing for the team to go out on this trip together to the East Coast and then to Winnipeg for a quick stopover on October 5th. But it's also great for the fans. Come on, the fans want to see the top players playing in the East Coast. Like obviously Drake Batherson's going to be the number one sell there. His family's all in Sydney, and I'm sure Igor's fired up too. And all the Cape Breton connections that the Senators have seemingly gone with the last few years. But I'm just fired up. Yeah, always love to see the people of Halifax, especially where I spent some time, and Nova Scotia get to take in some Sens hockey. And selfishly, I'm fired up here in Winnipeg that game is at the end of the preseason schedule rather than the beginning, because last year it was a pretty skeleton crew that came out here and got absolutely smacked around. Pretty unfair situation for especially Kevin Mandolese in goal, but excited for preseason hockey. As we mentioned, 3 months away. This preseason will start at home Sunday, September 24th, Toronto at Ottawa, 2 p.m. Then they play, hey, you'll get your fix of Sens hockey. The 24th, then the 25th, Ottawa at Toronto, the 27th, Ottawa at Montreal, the 29th, Winnipeg at Ottawa, and then they go out on their trip. October 1st will be in Sydney, Nova Scotia, up in Cape Breton. And then the next night in Halifax, Ottawa will take on Pittsburgh. I wonder which team the locals are going to be cheering for there.
Yeah, it might be a tough sell for Sens fans.
Crosby, maybe a bit of a draw there for the team. I should mention they're playing Florida up in Sydney, Nova Scotia as well. And then, yes, in Winnipeg, October 5th. And the preseason will wrap up in Ottawa against Montreal on October 7th. So doing some quick math, Pilsy, usually you get about a week off, if not a little less, after the preseason. So we're looking at a similar start date as last year. Last year, I believe it was October 13th was game one of the season in Buffalo.
Yeah, I think so.
I think we're looking at a pretty similar start date. If their last preseason game is a Saturday, maybe October 11th, October 12th, around that. So I've got that circled here as a potential for the home opener.
Yeah, I just hope the home opener is not on a Tuesday like last time, although that was the second best Tuesday of my life.
That's the time.
Yeah, exactly. It would be nice to have it on a Saturday so everyone can have an opportunity to get out there.
This is just conjecture. I don't know if it's true, but it feels like the Senators always start the season on the road too.
Yeah, it does seem that way. But
So-
I don't hate that. I don't hate that.
Oh, I don't hate that either. But if it does start on a Wednesday, maybe you play Wednesday in Toronto and then Saturday at home for the first game of the season. That's all coming up, but we can't wait. Sens hockey, 96 days away. Start the countdown. Maybe once we get past the draft, which is only 5 days away. And remember that Locked On Senators will be your home for all draft coverage. We've already got our individual player profiles up on YouTube. Please subscribe. The giveaway is still active. If we get to 6,000, be a friend, tell a friend. We're climbing, but we need your help. So be a friend, tell a friend. Get your wife, get your husband's phone, and make sure you're subscribed for them as well. Completely free of charge to subscribe to Locked On Senators. We are also planning a pre-draft live stream. Stay tuned for the timing on that, but we're going to aim for an hour and a half, get you all fired up for the NHL Draft. We've got clips, special guests, all sorts of great stuff coming. But Pilsy, could the Senators be active on the trade market? Thank God. I'm so thankful that it's not 2018, 2019 anymore. When the Senators, it's like, okay, does everyone want to stay or go? I know we have the Alex DeBrincat situation on our hands, but man, tough times out in Calgary right now.
Yeah, they are a new GM, Craig Conroy. I do not envy his position here because if you look at their cap-friendly page, there's a lot of key pieces to this team that have 1 year left on their deal. And what? 3 of them have made it four of them have made it very clear they will not be extending in Calgary.
Michael Backlund, Elias Lindholm, who's been one of their best players, Noah Hannafin, one of their stud defensemen, and then most recently Tyler Toffoli going into his last year. So that's tough times here for Craig Conroy.
Yeah, very tough. But at least, you know what, Ross? If I'm Craig Conroy, at least I'm saying, you know what? It sucks. We want to keep you, but thanks for letting me know. Like, at least I know, and now I can move you with a year left and get some assets in return so that the Johnny Gaudreau situation doesn't happen to them over again. Ross, the guy I'm looking at that you mentioned here, in my opinion, there is no better replacement for Alex DeBrincat than Tyler Toffoli. I've always been a Tyler Toffoli guy. This is a guy with an elite shot. He's got 1 year left at, let me see here.
Well, I'll tell you that right now. It's a
4.25. Yeah, so he's going to get a pay bump, that's for sure.
And 3.5 in base salary too. So he's on the back end. He's already been paid most of the money from this deal.
That's nice, definitely. Now, with Tyler Toffoli, he's played on Vancouver, he's played on Montreal, and now Calgary. I'm not sure if he's one of those guys that doesn't want to play in Canada. I don't know, but I think there is some sort of connection with his wife, fiance, girlfriend, I'm not sure, to the West Coast. Didn't they meet in LA? I'm pretty sure she's a West Coast girl, so there might be some West Coast bias there if they're picking where they want to go. So that's interesting to see if that plays a part in this.
Classic West Coast bias, eh? Just like for the NHL awards and getting to watch
West Coast, best coast.
Well, with Tyler Toffoli, he came out with a statement, or I don't know if it was a statement or if it was more so one of the insiders reporting it, but saying, and I appreciate this, saying, I don't have a list of 5 teams. He's going to go into this with an open mind.
Okay.
So
that's good for Ottawa.
Hey, it's the best possible outcome. And if you're the Senators, you look at Tyler Toffoli. He's been in this city before. He knows what to expect. A former member of the Ottawa 67s. He's also probably the best player from my age group at the end of the day, the 2010 draft class, where he was lighting it up with the Toronto Junior Canadiens in minor hockey. He's just always been the best player at his age group, and he's coming off a season that he scored 34 goals and had 73 points. So he had, 7 more points than Alex DeBrincat last year, just to put it in perspective. He's 30, turning 31 years old, and again, playing for his next contract, but he is also a UFA after this year. So I think Sens fans, some would also be a little nervous to bring in another guy who's got 1 year left on his deal, right? And this time you wouldn't even have the control that you do with DeBrincat.
Yeah, and what's the deal with getting him extended? I know there's usually some sort of like, do they have to wait till January 1st?
July 1st.
July 1st. Okay, I know there's some date like that.
January 1st is if you only sign a 1 year extension. Like
Gotcha.
when Mark Stone signed his 1 year contract with Ottawa, then you have to wait until January 1st.
That's it. Nice. Thanks for that. Yeah, so out of those guys, the only one I'm really interested in is Tyler Toffoli. Now, I'm not sure where he's going to slot in because he is a right winger. Your top 6 right wing guys. I mean, Claude Giroux and Drake Batherson, you're not bumping those guys off. So that makes it a little tricky to fit him in. But man, this guy's shot is elite. He puts up 30 goals consistently. Like, I think he would be a really good guy to replace DeBrincat. But also, like, the Flames aren't going to want DeBrincat. He's not going to want to sign there. So I have no clue how that would work.
No, but in theory, it's a nice thought that he could be an answer here. Also, some people on Twitter, we asked the question, how can the Senators take advantage of the Dan Vladar situation? Well, that's where I was getting to. The Calgary Flames.
Spoiler alert.
Maybe Dan Vladar, however you want to say it. This goalie
is Vladar.
Big 6'5". We've seen him play in Boston the last few years. He moved to Calgary. The last couple of years there, not ideal, but that team was a little bit of a mess in goal last year, especially with Jacob Markstrom. I put out Jacob Markstrom's name yesterday just for fun, but I do understand the pushback on that. $6 million for 3 more years is pretty tough to sell when you've already struck out on Matt Murray in a similar vein where you gave him that extra contract and it just didn't work out. So with Forsberg at 2.75, I think it does make sense to go Pilsey's thought process with a tandem situation, at least for next year. So could Dan Vladar be an opportunity in Calgary? I know Sens fans would be chopping at the bit to get Mackenzie Weegar, but now that they have Chychrun, I'd say that ship has sailed. Tough times for the 3 that signed long-term extensions in Calgary: Nazem Kadri, Jonathan Huberdeau, and Mackenzie Weegar. So we'll keep our ear to the streets and see what could happen between the Senators and Flames. But we've got some draft profiles to get into. We are in the deep trenches here. We've got 2 days left of draft profiles. We are into the deep 40s, but there are still some intriguing tools that these players have that could make them stars in the NHL. Draft profiles coming up next. You're listening to Locked On Senators.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Bird Dogs. Yes, you guys have heard us talk about Bird Dogs. They are our favorite shorts, and for multiple good reasons. First off, they look good. You got to start with that. If the shorts you're wearing don't look good, you're probably not going to wear them that often. And then you want the combo, look good, feel good. That's the Bird Dog specialty. Their shorts are so comfortable. I love the liner in them. And the big part about the liner is they have anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. That's clutch for this hot summer weather. We're having Canada Day weekend coming up here, so make sure you get comfy shorts so that you can stay cool and no sweat stink at all. And the nice thing is, whether you're going out on a patio, whether you're going to go for a hike, go camping, whatever you want, the versatility of Bird Dogs is a big part of why I love them too. Ross was wearing them out on the golf course yesterday. I wear them when I go for a walk around Collingwood. They're perfect for any sort of location. And look, guys, if you go to birddogs.com/lockedonnhl, you get a free Yeti-style tumbler. Look, I've got it right here. I've been drinking coffee out of it all morning. Love the tumbler, and you can get that as well if you go to birddogs.com/lockedonnhl. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Owl & Co. Grooming. I'm rocking the shirt right now. Owl & Co. Grooming.com. You can head there for all your grooming needs and use Senators 15 for 15% off your order. We want to support local. We want to support Sens fans. You can do both by supporting Owl & Co. Grooming. If you head to the website, lots of great merch, lots of great hair tonics. They want to make a grooming routine that's free from complications and just good vibes to start your day. Why not? They've got hair tonics. They've got sea salt sprays. Everything is made by hand in small batches with all natural ingredients like shea butter, coconut butter. Everything is for smooth skin all good for sensitive skin as well. So go check them out, owlandcogrooming.com. Find them on Twitter, find them on Instagram. Chris Sinclair, great citizen, is a fan of the show. We're fans of his. Senators 15% off your next order. Go to owlandcogrooming.com and check them out right now. It's owlandcogrooming.com. All right, Pilsy. Before we move on to our draft profiles today, some great answers coming in on our Twitter question. You can follow the show on Twitter at Sens Central. And I like what Chicken Run said.
There you go.
There you go. Learn from the Calgary Flames situation and don't hire a potentially toxic coach. Everyone hating on DJ should take a hard look at what happened there. The grass isn't always greener. Your thoughts on that?
That's actually a very good point by Chicken Run there, because I heard Elliot Friedman was saying, I heard like I have some sort of secret source on the 32 Thoughts podcast. They were saying, I'm pretty sure that it was like 5 or 6 players rescinded their trade requests once they fired Daryl Sutter. So I think they know the problem there.
Sounds like the damage had been done, though, because he's gone and these guys still don't want to re-sign.
Yeah, I think it's a weird time in Calgary right now. Like they don't, like last year really set them back. If they have a decent year and make playoffs last year, I think everyone's like, okay, like we see the pieces here, we can make this work. But I don't think things clicked there, and they had too much roster turnover, and now they're in a very weird spot.
And it's one of the worst buildings in the NHL too, right? These players, they want to be, treated in the facilities that, they see when they go to Vegas and Seattle, these new buildings. Detroit's brand new, all these new buildings popping up around the league. And it, like, the Saddle Dome's a dump. I've only been there for a concert, but it's a dump.
And that's coming from us CTC dwellers here.
Well, the CTC is beautiful. It's just in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. No, hey, I wasn't dumping on the CTC.
Yeah, what the hell, man?
I'm sure that's what Flames fans would retract with.
Yeah, and you know what? They'd have a good point. Coming in at number 45 on our Locked On Senators NHL Draft rankings, it's Carson Rehkopf from the Kitchener Rangers.
Ross, I loathe the Kitchener Rangers, and we have 2 of them on our profiles here. So I'm just getting that out of the way right off the top. I'm going to do my best to let my Guelph Storm bias not affect how I rate these players. It's not their fault that they're wearing the Kitchener Rangers jersey. But Carson Rehkopf, there's a lot of interesting things about him. He's a center/left winger. I've got him at 6'1", 194 pounds. He plays with the Kitchener Rangers, as you mentioned, in 68 games, 30 goals, 29 assists, good for 59 points. So pretty solid point production from Carson Rehkopf.
I think he could be one of those prototypical power forwards in the NHL. He scored 30 goals in junior last year, had 29 assists, 59 points in 68 games, had 40 penalty minutes as well. Now in the playoffs, only 2 goals in 9 games. I didn't love that. It was a bit disappointing the way that Kitchener went out in 5 games to the London Knights. Just kind of, the game they won, they took it to them, won 6-1, but just couldn't get anything going in the others. And you would hope that a player like Carson Rehkopf, who's one of the top scorers on the team, could have, help maybe a little bigger push than 6 points in 9 games when we're talking about a lot of other guys in this range who just exploded in the playoffs. But that didn't really affect too many of the scouts. I think he's a mid to late second round pick, no matter how you slice it. Bob McKenzie's final rankings came out, and at 41 on their list, that kind of gives you the best idea of what the scouts are thinking in the NHL. Chris Peters has him at 44 on his list. Scott Wheeler at 47. I missed Corey Pronman at 39, actually the highest of anyone on Carson Rehkopf. And then Elite Prospects has him at 68. Craig Button at 66. That's an average of 50.8. But raw talent would be kind of where I start with that. There's shifts where scouts, especially reading through the Elite Prospects game-by-game log of him, where some nights he's the best player on the ice, and others you wonder if he even put on a jersey.
Yeah, I mean, his best attribute is his shot. And when you have guys where their shot is elite and they rely on that, I mean, he scored 30 goals, so it goes without saying. But sometimes when you're not getting the puck, or maybe you just don't have that release, or you're not hitting the net, makes you kind of invisible out there, at least in form of what people expect from you. He did have 3 hat tricks last season, Ross, so you can tell that he can put it on. Like you mentioned, sometimes he looks great, sometimes not so much. But what I like about him is he's got that shot, like I mentioned, and he likes to float into open spaces to be ready for a pass. And that's what he does really well. He can slip behind a play, go unnoticed, and then boom, he's open for a pass. Teammate hits him, and he gets a really good scoring opportunity, and he can finish on those more often than not. So I think that's where he's really coveted by NHL teams scouting him. And he does have some playmaking abilities, but EP mentioned that, like you talked about, some nights the playmaking was on, and then some nights it wasn't. So if he's going to want to be a better dual threat guy, and if you can up your playmaking ability, that inherently helps your shot, because teams won't just cheat on your shot as much. So if he can make that a little bit more consistent, I think he's going to have a lot more success.
But the fact that he has so many NHL tools already, with the shot, with the size, there's stretches where his defensive play stands out. You could see him as a breakout candidate for next season. And EP also loads the fact that he's a perfect second round pick, where the upside is still there, where he could be higher on a redraft 5 years from now. But there's also a bust possibility in terms of getting to the potential of being a middle 6 forward. And the skating is what we have to get to with that. It's not perfect. And with that, I think he struggles a little bit in transition because of that. He's never going to be a play driver on a line, though. I think that's for sure. He's going to be the third man on a top 6 line, if he is in that position where they're just trying to get him the puck in scoring positions and crash the net. That's the type of high upside. I don't want to say this. I'm not comparing these two players, but the way Danny Heatley was never a good skater, but he was always able to find a way to produce, because when the puck was in his vicinity, whether it was on edge, whether it was 2 feet in the air, whatever, he could corral the puck and put it in the back of the net. Goal scoring will never go out of style. And if Carson Rehkopf can find a way to score despite maybe not being the fastest or the quickest in transition, or, the best at anything but shooting, he's still going to find a role in the NHL.
Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like he's kind of a well-rounded guy with a little above average shot, and that's going to help him out. I think, Ross, we're probably going to see a late second round pick for Carson Rehkopf. It'll be interesting to see how his next season goes with the Kitchener Rangers. He had a 26-point increase from last season, so let's see if he can expand on that even more. I don't see anything too exciting about him, but I think he is a nice prospect that teams are going to look at and say, hey, we're adding to our depth in our prospect pool by adding Rakeoff.
Yeah, and it seems, again, like a Boston Bruins, a team that had, a top-end team where they're not looking to just have a player. They're looking for a player in their prospect pool where it's like, hey, this guy could complement what we already have in the NHL. And maybe Boston's not the only example. There's lots of teams like a New York Rangers, kind of what they did with Brendan Othman last year. Like, he had all the tools, he didn't always put them together, and then boom, he had a great year this year as draft +1, and now it's looking like a great pick in the mid to late first round. Whereas this, I think it's going to be mid to late second round. But let's put it this way: if he gets past 50, I'll be surprised, especially after seeing Bob McKenzie put him at 41 on his rankings. It's kind of like the cheat code is wherever Bob McKenzie puts him, you could see him go around that range. So I think a top 50 pick is coming for Carson Rehkopf. I think if he works on his skating this summer, he could be a breakout candidate for next season and beyond. For more draft profiles, head over to Locked On Senators on YouTube. There, you'll be able to find over 50 heading into the NHL Draft in Nashville. All right, coming up next, we've got another Kitchener Ranger and a goalie, Pilsy. Excited for that. That's next. You're listening to Locked On Senators.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Guys, if you're looking to get to any sort of event this summer, you got to check out Game Time. It's the stress-free way to get last-minute deals on whatever you're interested in. Sports, comedy, music, theater, they've got tickets available for all of those things, and you can focus on getting hyped, not worry about the stress. You can get the Game Time guarantee, which means you'll always get the best price. In fact, if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And I love this. Ross loves this about Game Time. You get images of your seats before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And you can buy your tickets in a matter of seconds. Just 2 taps on your phone. 1, 2, boom. Tickets are right there on your phone. It's that easy. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
All right, you're listening to Locked On Senators here, Friday edition of the show. Next week is draft week. Live stream coming on Wednesday. Make sure you subscribe, turn the notification bell on, and be a friend. Tell a friend that it's time. Pilsy, yes or no, the Senators will have a first-round pick in this draft?
No.
You don't think it? You think? I think a 2024 first-round pick will be included for DeBrincat.
Yes.
And you know why I like that? Because nothing gets me fired up than hate watching other teams and just cheering for them to lose each and every night. How much fun was it when San Jose actually came through and lost every single game?
That was awesome. And we can never repay San Jose for that utter failure of a season that brought us Tim Stützle.
Martin Jones, you are the man. We appreciate you wholeheartedly as what you've done. Coming in at number 46 on the Locked On Senators NHL Draft rankings, we're going back to Kitchener. It's Hunter Brzustewicz, who's a defenseman who was committed to the University of Michigan, but last minute said, no, I want to play in the OHL. This Kitchener Rangers team, they're going to be stacked. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way.
No, it didn't. I mean, that was his choice to go to Kitchener Rangers instead of Michigan, which is a very, very interesting choice. I don't know why he made that decision, Ross, because I would say 99% of all players that come from the US NTDP go to college, right? Like that is very standard.
Especially as a Michigan kid. He
Yeah.
grew up there. You got to think that was his dream, was to play there.
Yeah, maybe he just thought he was going to get stuck behind other players. Like when he was at the program, he was behind Lane Hudson, and I'm blanking on another one of the players, but he was behind a couple guys.
Seamus Casey, I think you're going
to
there. Yeah, well, and Seamus Casey, I believe, ended up going to Michigan. Michigan was stacked. There's no question about it. He probably wouldn't have played much at Michigan last year, but now with Luke Hughes graduated and a few of the other guys on the back end, you're kind of wondering, hey, would that have been a good decision? Instead, he goes to Kitchener and has a really successful offensive season.
Yep.
Brzustewicz had 68 games played, only 6 goals, but 51 assists, so almost a point per game, 57 points, and only 12 penalty minutes. The rankings are pretty consistent. Scott Wheeler has him at 40. I'm personally shocked that Scott Wheeler is the highest on an undersized puck-moving defenseman. Then we have a pretty big gap. 52 is Elite Prospects and Bob McKenzie. 54 Chris Peters. 58 Corey Pronman. And 61 Craig Button. I will go out on a very strong limb and say that he's going to be a late second-round pick in this draft. He stands 6 feet tall. He's 190 pounds. He's a defenseman where I think you can see the upside. He's a right shot as well. He's also one of the oldest players in this draft class, though, a November birthday. Does that impact your thoughts of him at all?
I mean, a little bit, and maybe that's another reason why he decided to decommit from Michigan, being like, I'm already an older kid. I can't be playing behind other guys. I need to go somewhere where I'm going to get a chance to shine, and he definitely got that in Kitchener. Ross, you mentioned he's a defenseman, but I would classify him as an offenseman. This kid is an offensive defenseman. He's all offense, as you saw from the points, like 57 points in 68 games. He had 4 assists in 9 playoff games. And this kid is a breakout machine. He can break the puck up the ice very easily. And not only skating-wise, Ross, but I saw him do a lot of kind of, line passes, like over the blue line, right to a guy in the neutral zone, hitting a guy in stride with a fairly long pass. And that's the thing. He can skate it or he can pass it. So it's hard for teams to decide how they're going to stop him from a breakout. But I've thought once he gets the puck into the O zone as well, he's so patient with it, and he's willing to find those shooting lanes so that pucks aren't hitting shin pads on the way to the net. And so you get a guy that can break the puck up the ice, and then he can find shooting lanes to get it through to the net. That's a recipe for success for an offensive defenseman.
It is. To me, it's just what's his B game? Does he have one?
I don't know. I don't know if he's got a B game. Like his defense and physical game could improve according to what kind of the scouts that EP mentioned and watched. So I think you're looking at a guy that, maybe he becomes a third pair guy that runs a second power play unit, and he's kind of an offensive specialist, and you get him with a shutdown guy on his pair, on that bottom pair. So I'm not sure where he's going to end up, but there's one thing you can't deny, Ross, that this kid is very talented offensively.
No, there's no taking that away from him. Yeah. Offenseman, I smiled when you said that, because it is perfect description of him. Mobile, strong, even for his size, I would say as well. And he's one of the people who impressed at the testing, at the combine, and at the top prospects game. So his transition game is going to be what carries him. I worry, and maybe it's not a worry, especially where we have him ranked, but that there's some Eric Brandstrom in him, where it's like, yeah, the offensive numbers are popping at this level, but are they going to at the next level? Or is he going to be kind of trying to figure out what his role is at the NHL level? Because if he was worried, and I'm not saying he was, but if he was worried about playing behind top players at Michigan, he's going to be playing behind some pretty good players wherever he goes in the NHL. He's not just going to be gifted opportunities to play on power plays, and that it's going to have to be through what he does at 5-on-5. And the offense is never going to be a question. It's just, will it be enough at the next level? I have a couple doubts on that, but I also could see a world where this is a home run pick similar to Lane Hudson.
That's the thing, Ross. Like, this is a guy where you can see attributes that you can latch onto and be like, these are what's going to carry him to the next level. His breakout, his shot, his ability to be patient with the puck. Those are all very, very strong attributes for Brzustewicz here. So if I'm an NHL scout and I'm looking to take a swing mid-second round on a defenseman, I don't mind this pick.
No, I would actually like this pick late, though, in the second round. Like, the great transition is what the NHL is moving towards more and more. And those are the types of defensemen that you're going to need more and more. So I'm kind of talking myself into it as we go through this, because the skating's great. The compete's good. Elite hockey sense, I would say, is probably his best calling card. Now, for a guy who's great in transition, Corey Pronman mentions that the puck skills might not be there with it on his stick. From the highlights I saw, and again, they're highlights, so it's when they're showing him at his best, he looked pretty smooth to me, but that might be something he needs to work on to get to the next level. But he'll be back in Kitchener next year. They should, keyword should, have a really good team, and if they do, he's going to be an enormous part of what they do.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, Ross. When you're an offensive defenseman and you're playing top minutes like Brzustewicz is, there's going to be some bad plays where you're hanging on too much or you're risking it, because that's just how it goes, right? So I think with Brzustewicz, with more time, he's going to improve on that. Let me pose this question to you, Ross. Would you rather, let's say mid-second round, you're looking for a defenseman, would you rather go with a guy like Brzustewicz, who has that offensive capabilities, but there's some things that make you a little concerned? Or would you rather go with a guy like Theo Lindstein, where there's not much offensive upside, he's more well-rounded?
I would go with Theo Lindstein over him.
Okay, interesting. See, I would go with Brzustewicz, because with Lindstein, there wasn't any eye-popping attributes, whereas Brzustewicz, I've got something I can hold on to and hope that carries him.
I have Brucevich right under Caden Price in my overall rankings.
Yeah,
right under them. And just because I think Caden Price, if he develops, he'll be a two-way, minute munching defenseman who can complement a really, really offensive player. Hey, good pair potentially down the road, Caden Price and Hunter Brzustewicz.
There we go.
I do think that there's just a little bit more certainty with the upside, and that's why I lean that way. But there's a lot to like about Hunter. And I think next year you're going to see an enormous offensive season from him in the OHL, but I want to see him round out the rest of his game, both like when you're in each zone, offense and defense, because he's elite in transition, a breakout machine. And if your team just took him, there's a lot to look forward to. For more, if you want to look forward to other picks that your team's made, in all likelihood, we have those on our YouTube channel where all of our draft profiles will live forever. Coming up next, well, why don't we get to it right now? Because we have another goalie to get to on the Locked On Senators draft rankings. All right, coming in at number 47 on the Locked On Senators NHL draft rankings, we're going to the U.S. National Team Development Program for the final time, Pilsy. I feel like we should pour one out. We've done 7, 8, or 9 of the members of this team, and we kept saying all of their stats are so good. The goalie must look good because the wins and losses have to be elite. And sure enough, Trey Augustine was the beneficiary of that.
Yeah, Trey Augustine's numbers they're insane. Like it's wild how good he is. Like, let's just start with his record, Ross. With the USNTDP, 29-1-2. So yes, you heard that right. That's 1 regulation loss. And then in the USHL, he had a 10-1 record. And then in the World Juniors, he had a 4-1 record. So this guy doesn't put up bigger numbers in the regulation loss column than a 1. He gives opponents 1 regulation win all season, no matter where he's playing, and that's it.
You don't want to go with his under 18 record as well?
Oh, hit me with that. I didn't note that one down.
6-0-0.
Okay, well, there you go. Awesome.
Undefeated. And I mean, the save percentage is right there with it. 926 with the U.S. under 18 team, 934 at the under 18s. Now at the World Juniors, a little bit lower. Canada lit them up for 6, I want to say, was the score in the semis. Yep. But outside of that, I mean, he played great in every other game. And then that wild bronze medal game as well, where he got pulled after 2 periods. They won 8-7 in overtime. But beyond that, Trey Augustine's season was about as good as you can ask from anybody. And what really is impressing scouts is the pro mentality that Trey Augustine has at the rink, away from the rink. It has to be tough for him playing on such a good team. And I'm not saying that facetiously. I mean it. It's hard to stay in the game when you're only facing 17, 18 shots. A lot of these game logs, like at the World Under 18s, they beat Switzerland 10-0. He had 13 shots.
Yeah.
Then they beat Czechia 4-1. He had 12 shots against them. Like, it is a mental fortitude and impressive in its own way to be dialed in and stay focused when you're not getting any action. Contrary to that, though, Pilsy, are you worried in a sense that next year could be a rude awakening for him, seeing a ton of pucks for the first time in years?
Well, it's not like he's going to a horrible program. He's committed to Michigan State. I wouldn't call them a powerhouse, but definitely that's a solid program, and I'm sure they're going to have a good season. I don't know their roster next year. But it's very hard to judge a goalie that plays on a team as good as the U.S. program. Like, you can watch highlights, and he does have a couple really good saves, and you can tell that his positioning is good. Like, this is one of those guys, Ross, that our friend Pete Fry, the goalie mental coach, would say this guy's dialed in. He is so dialed in. He has precision focus. All his moves are like when he's doing his pushes across the net and across the crease in his butterfly, he's not slipping and going a little over. They are crisp, and he's stopping perfectly exactly where he wants. He's focused. You can tell he's always in good position. He's one of those goalies that he's going to make almost every save just because he's in the exact perfect spot. He's not going to have those desperation saves, I don't think, because he's not going to be out of position like that. And I just feel like, Ross, I watched a video, Chris Peters, actually one of our friends of the show. He did a couple interviews with the coach of the U.S. program and players, and all they had to say is this guy is so focused. He comes to work prepared. He never misses a day, all those kinds of things. I feel like Trey Augustine is one of those goalie weirdos. Like, don't talk to me on game days. I got to put my left sock on and then my left skate on and then my right sock on and then my right skate on. I have to do everything exactly. Like I bet this guy has superstitions and he's one of those goalie weirdos. And I say that as an endearing term, as Ross and I are tendies ourselves. We can understand the weirdness that goalies have, but definitely the focus is there.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring that up because EP has his shades of his Carter Hart, who's not
okay.
the most superstitious goalie going. If you remember back at the World Juniors when he wouldn't be the last goal, or he had to be the last player off the ice. So Switzerland was like, okay, our backup goalie is just going to literally stand on the ice at the intermission. And they had like a stare off while the Zamboni's coming about to run them over. So
that's their whole game plan. How are we going to beat Canada? Our backup goalie, who's not even going to play a minute, is going to destroy the confidence of Carter Hart.
Heck yeah. Well, at Michigan State, there's already some NHL drafted players on that team. Isaac Howard from last year,
nice.
Which did he transfer from? I want to say, wasn't he at Minnesota Duluth? He was transferred from Minnesota Duluth to go to Michigan State. They also have Red Savage, all-time name, Detroit Red Wings pick there. And the other goalie so far listed for Michigan State is coming out of Penticton, who we've done a lot. Hey, talk about records. That goalie with Penticton, 16-0-1 in the playoffs for him. So, hey, it'll be a good battle. Two young goalies coming in, 19 years old, and one of them will have an opportunity to get the reins there at Michigan State with the Spartans. So I'm fired up for Trey Augustine. He's the third-ranked goalie for me in this draft class. I've got Michael Hrabal, number one. Pilsy, I had to take my guy out of number one. Hrabal's that good.
I can't believe you bumped Jacob Fowler.
Jacob Fowler's my number two.
Okay.
I'll give it away right now. Michael Hrabal, I have 30th on my list, and I have Jacob Fowler 38th. No spoilers. Tune in Tuesday, June 27th. And we'll get our complete final rankings for Pilsy and I after we finish up our draft rankings here on Locked On Senators. But yeah, he's one of the top goalies in the class. There's no question. There's also the goalie from the Brandon Wheat Kings, but I have him as a far number 5 because I have Adam Gahan, the Slovak goalie, as my number 4. So in terms of my top 5 goalies, Trey Augustine, number 3, I definitely see him going in the top 2 rounds. And just like we're going to see with defensemen early in the first round into the mid tier, I think that when one goalie goes, we're going to see a run of goalies, maybe 4, if not all 5 that I mentioned, being taken in that second round.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see a goalie taken in the first round this year, Ross, just because there's so much talent.
I do. Well, after it's cheating by seeing Bob McKenzie's rankings, but Bob McKenzie has he's got Michael Hrabal as a first rounder, so that makes me believe.
Where's Hrabal ranked for McKenzie?
Oh, sorry, never mind. I thought it said 29. It's 39.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Maybe early second. Then I stand corrected.
Yeah. I think you've got Augustine, Hrabal, and Fowler. You could mix and match those guys anyway, and I wouldn't push too hard back on that.
Gahan, the goalie from Slovakia, is ranked 60th on Bob's list, and Jacob Fowler's down at 92.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah,
interesting.
Senators territory.
Yeah. Imagine the Sens first pick goalie.
They can't.
No, they can't do that.
No, they can't.
Or at least they shouldn't.
But they might.
That's why I did that, Ross. I did that just to save us.
Oh man, that's great. So with Trey Augustine, though, he's a 4-star guy for me. Like I think he's going to be an NHL goalie. He's 6'1". Again, how many 6'1" goalies are there in the NHL? But the way he moves laterally, the way he defends the play when it's below the goal line, great at coming out in and out of his reverse VH, and he's able to really control rebounds. So I'm a big fan of Trey Augustine, and if your team just drafted him, it's going to be a long road. There's no question. It always is for goalies, but the light at the end of the tunnel could be very bright with Trey Augustine. For more Locked On Senators draft profiles, head over to YouTube, where we have over 50 ready for you when your team makes a pick at the NHL Draft in Nashville. All right, Pilsy, couple thoughts to finish off today's show. First, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah. Ross, I can't believe we haven't mentioned this.
Whoa.
World Juniors are coming back to the nation's capital.
That's awesome. Really excited for that. It's the 2025 World Juniors, but remember, the year of the World Juniors is when the gold medal is handed out. So it's really December of 2024.
Ooh, good point. Yes.
So not this upcoming December, but the next year, Ottawa will host the World Juniors. Can you believe it? the first time it's in the nation's capital since that iconic call from Gord Miller when Jordan Eberle tied it up against the Russians in the semifinals with 5 seconds left.
And one of the greatest hockey memories I have. That game was absolutely insane. Ross,
Another fun fact, though, about that tournament, Erik Karlsson won Best Defenseman right after being drafted by Ottawa.
Hell yeah, you love to see that. I forgot about that. I don't want to plan your agenda for you, but is it safe to say in permanent marker we can say we will be going to at least one of those games?
I want to say yeah. We're going to have to make it work.
Yeah, come on.
We're going to have to make it work, especially if the Senators have someone there. But either way, just the vibe is going to be outstanding, both in TD Place as well, where the 67s play. There'll be some games there and out at the big rink in Canada. So fired up for that. Not fired up about a little news from the NHL. I'm not going to go off on a tangent or anything, but I just want to say I think it's pretty dumb that a few of the bigots won. And no more specialty jerseys. No more hockey fights cancer jerseys in warm-up. No more military appreciation. No more pride jerseys. No more indigenous. I loved what they did with the indigenous design jerseys where they had the logos and everything. Anyways, to me, that's just kind of an overcorrection. And not even a correction. I think that's the wrong way to put it. But an overreaction to what is a few people being ridiculous. And we discussed that throughout the year as it came out. Just it's
a step backwards, Ross. Like, I think that's the best way to put it. Like,
and how many people are going to be positively affected by this? 0.
Yeah.
And how many people are going to be adversely affected by it? More than 0.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you're completely taking away all the work that has been done to try to make hockey a more inclusive game. And not even just the inclusivity when you're talking about indigenous people, and the pride jerseys and things like that. But just like you mentioned, like hockey fights cancer, supporting veterans, all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know. It
just seems like a complete joke that they even felt the need to control what people are wearing in warm-up. Like, if a team wants to put on jerseys. Who cares? It's a jersey. It's a jersey.
Yeah, it's really too bad.
You know what I mean? It's not going to hurt you just by having different colors on it. It's really not going to hurt you. So there's that. Oh, I had one more. Oh, my other final thought just coming through the board right now. Congratulations. One of the best days in Sens history. One of the best trades was made on this day in Sens history. Do you know which one?
No.
On this day in 2001, the Ottawa Senators traded Alexei Yashin to the New York Islanders in exchange for a young Zdeno Chara, Bill McCult, and the second overall pick in that draft, which ended up being Jason Spezza. That worked out well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, great deal.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Next week is all draft all the time, and then we'll focus on free agency, and interview season is around the corner. For today, we say goodbye. Have a great weekend, everyone. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.